Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today's episode it was a little inspired by my last solo episode. So the last episode that I recorded solo was on honey. And I recorded a honey episode because I came across a bunch of different products that I thought were really interesting and really worth sharing. And so I decided to do a deep dive on honey. And coming off the honey episode, I thought, well, what about all these other sweeteners? Here's the thing. Our brains are wired to want sweet things, right? Because from an anthropological perspective, they represented sources of quick energy, which at a most foundational level is part of our survival mechanism. Like if you look at indigenous tribes, these are not people that eat a whole bunch of sweets, but you better believe that when they can get into a beehive, they will consume the honey because it's a massive source of energy for them. And it tastes good. And so the human brain is kind of wired to want sweet things because sweet foods are typically safe. And like I said, they're a good source of energy. Now it is quick energy, but nevertheless, it's a really great source of energy for our brain. Our brain loves glucose, and our brain is an energy pig, consuming upwards of 20% of our total energy and marginally 50% of the sugar that's available in the body. So now a lot of people, keto people will say, no, sugar is bad. It's bad for the brain. Your brain loves glucose. The brain it functions on glucose. And even though Alzheimer's is considered to be type 3 diabetes, where the brain becomes insulin resistant, nevertheless, the brain prefers glucose as a fuel. So here's the bad news about sugar. We have this crazy relationship. We love it, but it's a Cinderella story, right? For our bodies. Too little sugar leaves the brain tired, under-resourced, kind of like that whole brain fog kind of crashing thing. And too much sugar can drive inflammation, overexcitability, and paradoxically, a resistance to insulin, robbing neurons of the very thing that they need to function. Plus, as we all know, excess sugar in general will make us fat, inflamed, and generally unhealthy. Our cells eventually become resistant to the very signals that allow sugar to enter to be turned into energy. So the excess sugar turns into and gets stored as fat. So general mayhem ensues, and we become part of that cohort of people who are in metabolic mayhem, if you will, right? So we become insulin resistant, we become overweight, blood pressure goes up, all of these crazy things start to happen metabolically. So our bodies kind of have this love-hate relationship with sugar. So as you can see, our relationship to sweet things is rooted in this primordial need. But the flip side is that because of the way sugar interacts with our brain and neurochemicals, it is actually extremely addictive to us. Look at kids. We can see little kids that are addicted to sugar. Plus, it's excitatory, right? So you can tell a child that's being fueled on sugar. If you're a parent, you've seen this. And if you're an adult and you've ever tried to do a sugar detox, if you're one of those people that overconsumes sugar, you will know that you will feel angry, you will feel sad, you will feel tired and headachy. You even get these flu-like symptoms. It's literally no fun. You go into some kind of withdrawal from sugar. So this is not great. So clearly sugar is this thing we want to manage. And so today I want to take us on an exploration of sweeteners. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's something here for everyone, whether you live in fear of blood glucose spikes or are a carb-fueled machine. We're going to go over some of the options and uncover some interesting facts on a few of them. And then at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my thoughts on how we should manage this whole sweet thing. So let's start with food. There are several food-based sweeteners that we can use, and proponents will say that they're far less harmful to the body because they're natural. They bring minerals, antioxidants, and other benefits to the table. And in many cases, that's kind of true, but only to a point. Critics will lump them in with any sugar and say that sugar is sugar is sugar. And Yes, but no. So, in my humble opinion, there are significant differences that really kind of need to be teased out. So, let's start with honey. And I'm not going to spend much time on honey because if you're interested in honey, I'm going to shoot you back to that last solo that I did where I talked all about honey. I did a whole episode on it. It is truly a magical compound. In its raw form, it has antimicrobial, antibacterial effects depending on where the honey's coming from. Like Manuka honey from New Zealand is wildly high in antibacterial and antimicrobials. It has MGO, which is this very powerful compound in it. It's shown in research to maybe be helpful against cancer. Like it's crazy and it tastes amazing. Having said that, if you have blood sugar issues, you don't want to be consuming it by the bucket. It's not going to cure your cancer. Let's be clear. But in small amounts, like a teaspoon a day, it can have some real benefits. It even has some probiotics for gut health. So in small amounts, raw honey can be okay for you, particularly if, well, actually, there's some research that shows that even people who have blood sugar issues can use small amounts with benefits. But I'm saying small, right? So this is not a couple of tablespoons a day. This is like a teaspoon, maybe 2 teaspoons in a day. Also, honey can be used as a vehicle or a carrier for other medicinal compounds. So I talked about the Wise Earth, longevity, and detox honeys. So again, go back to that episode, check it out. There's lots of good information there. I'm going to say that honey as a food to be used as a sweetener definitely has some benefits. You don't want to overheat it because then you kill those microbes, the beneficial ones, and you don't want to give it to babies, right? Because it can cause botulism. So honey gets probably as much of a thumbs up as anything else. It's just that you want to be cautious with it. And you're going to want to be cautious with all of these, to be honest. Okay, next up is maple syrup, another food, right? So as a Canadian, I'm a lover of maple syrup. It has a very rich flavor. It's not like a pure sugar flavor. And pure and organic maple syrup. Now you got to watch it with maple syrup because there's a lot of crap out there. But it is a great source of minerals, but it will spike your blood glucose. So a little bit goes a long way. Use it as a treat, and treat it is. And there's actually a line of drinks in Canada made with maple water, which is not maple syrup, but it's actually the sap of maple trees before it's been concentrated into maple syrup. It's actually delicious. It's low glycemic. If you can find it, it's really good stuff. So this is maple water, but that's not a sweetener. I kind of digress. So maple syrup gets pretty much a thumbs up because it's natural, again, in small amounts. Okay, let's move on to stevia. Still natural, but much more processed, right? So some of the pros are that stevia has no calories, whereas honey and maple syrup do. So if you're one of those people that's watching for food energy, no calories in stevia. It comes from a plant. It doesn't spike blood sugar, and it's 100 to 300 times sweeter than sugar. So that means that a drop goes a long way. On the downside, there's a lot of people that can actually detect a very kind of a bitter aftertaste in stevia. It may drive cravings for sweet foods. Now, this is going to apply to everything I'm going to talk about tonight. And you know who you are. Some people, when they taste sweet, all they want is more. And it's going to drive their cravings. So if you're one of those people, this podcast really isn't for you, because there are some people out there, and I'm actually one of them. The more sweet I eat, the more sweet I want. If I stay away from sweets, I don't crave them. Once I start to eat them, it's like I will often talk about my gummy problem, right? I used to love gummy bears and jelly beans, things like that, all the squishy things. And if I had a bag of gummy bears on my desk and I would say, okay, I'm only going to eat 10 gummy bears, those gummy bears would be calling my name until they were all in my stomach, until they were all gone. So I know I have a problem, so I don't buy them. And I don't buy them for a lot of different, even the natural ones, okay? Even the ones that supposedly don't have sugar, not true. Smart sweets, not so smart. They will spike your blood sugar. I know, I've tested them with a blood sugar monitor. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here a little bit, but the point is, I did want to say that if you're one of those people that sugar begets more sugar, know thyself and know that most of this stuff is really not going to be great. It's not going to be very helpful to you. It's still good for you to know about them, but it doesn't mean that you want to be consuming, because none of these, I will tell you, I came in to record this podcast thinking that some of them were a get out of jail free card. There are no get out of jail free cards here. There are only things that can be used in moderate or small amounts, even the ones that don't spike blood sugar at all. I'm going to get back to those. So let's get back to stevia. So it may drive cravings for sweet foods, like I just said. And often stevia gets mixed with sugar alcohols, which are not so great, which I'm going to talk about in a little while. And in some people, they can cause stomach upset. Plus, if you're allergic to ragweed, stevia can cause a cross reaction, like your body can kind of confuse it. So if you're miserable during ragweed season wherever you live, stevia is probably not going to be a great idea for you. And last but not least, there's been some evidence and some research that it may have negative effects on the microbiome. So stevia for me is a big fat only kind of if you need it, but I wouldn't go too big on stevia. Okay, here's one that I really do like. And this may be the one of all the sweeteners I'm going to talk about tonight. This probably is the one that I couldn't really find any downsides on it. It's monk fruit. It's also called lohan guo, and it's actually used in traditional Chinese medicine as a medicinal. It's 200 times sweeter than sugar, so a little goes a long way. It has 0 calories. It creates 0 increase in blood sugar. It actually contains antioxidants, and it may have anti-carcinogenic properties. Like I said, it is used in traditional Chinese medicine as a medicinal. Plus, there's these compounds called mogrosides in monk fruit that feed the gut microbiome. So net, monk fruit doesn't really have much in the way of downsides. It's very sweet. Like I said, it's very pricey. When you buy it, you have to be really careful because it's so expensive. All these companies tend to mix it with other stuff, particularly sugar alcohols. So if you're going to use monk fruit and you're going to buy it, then I would say read your labels very carefully. Make sure that it's pure monk fruit with nothing else. Lakanto, I think it's Lakanto is the name of the company. They make these little monk fruit drops. They put them in little bottles. They're fantastic. But they make a powdered monk fruit that is mixed with erythritol. So the drops are pure monk fruit, whereas the powdered stuff that they make is mixed with erythritol. Right. Okay, next, coconut sugar. Similar sweetness to sugar. It does contain calories. It has a lower glycemic index, but nevertheless will cause a response in the blood sugar than refined sugar. It does provide some minerals. And it contains inulin, which can be good news, bad news, because in some people it can cause bloating. So coconut sugar is better than refined sugar. It's certainly better than high fructose corn syrup. Any of these things really are, but it's still sugar. So if you're going to use coconut sugar, just be modest. And if you have blood sugar issues or insulin resistance, then coconut sugar probably... You could try it, but I would say it's going to be very, very moderate. Now we're going to get into artificial sweeteners. I'm going to tell you right here, I'm not a massive fan of artificial sweeteners, but I wanted to talk about them because they're very prevalent. We have sucralose at the top of the list. It is, get this, 600 times sweeter than sugar. Holy monkey. Like, that's nuts. It has 0 calories. It is considered safe by the FDA, but there is a lot of controversy over the long-term effects on long-term effects. Some animal studies have indicated that it can actually be carcinogenic, and you can find it in a lot of supplements. So the thing with sucralose probably is that in tiny amounts, it's not going to be a massive issue. But the problem is because it's found in so many different things, like a lot of supplements, like essential amino acids, branched chain amino acids, protein powders will use sucralose because it's cheap. So I would just be cautious because it can add up, right? So yeah, so sucralose kind of not too much. Next up, saccharin. This is what my grandmother used to use. It has 0 calories, and she was diabetic. 200 to 700 times sweeter than sugar. Now, in the 70s, researchers found that there were some studies that showed that it increased blood cancer in rats. And since then, though, many, many human studies have disproved it. But I think the jury's still out on this one. And it's because it's synthetic. I'm not a fan at all. I would probably just stay away from it if I was you. If you have to use a little bit of it, it may not be the end of the world. Definitely don't cook with it. But I would say in general, I would stay away from the artificial ones. So that we started with sucralose, we moved on to saccharin. Next is aspartame, which you would find as NutraSweet or Equal. Those are the 2 brands. All right, picking up from aspartame, NutraSweet, and Equal. It is widely used in foods, beverages, and pharmaceuticals. That being said, there's research. Some research has shown that aspartame may have negative effects on the brain, and it may even increase certain types of cancer. It may exacerbate fibromyalgia and IBS. I've linked to an article in the show notes. It's just a kind of like an article that refers to the studies. But I would say for those reasons, I wouldn't go there. I would not use aspartame. And it's in 1,000 things. It's in a lot of drinks, like soft drinks. So please stay away from aspartame. There's better stuff out there. Okay, then we get on to sugar alcohols. We're starting with xylitol, which is really interesting. So xylitol has very little impact on blood sugar levels. It does have some antibacterial and antiviral properties. So it's used in gum. So a lot of people will chew gum with xylitol because it's supposed to be good at reducing the risk of cavities and it's supposed to be good for the oral biome. It was also, during COVID, it became a big deal because there's these nasal sprays called X-Clear. That is xylitol nasal spray. And it was actually recommended by the American Dental Association because it would block the entry of viruses through the nasal passages. Really interesting stuff. To this day, I would say that if you're flying, it's not a bad idea to do a couple of squirts of this X-Clear spray up your nose when you're on the plane. And it's cheap as chips. I think a bottle costs $12. You can order it on Amazon. You can find it in most health food stores. You can even find it in a lot of drugstores. So it's got similar sweetness to sugar. So those are the good things. The bad news on xylitol, it is wildly toxic to dogs. Like it'll cause liver necrosis. How do I know this? Well, I read it in a bunch of research, and I know about the liver necrosis stuff because my dog got into dark chocolate sweetened with xylitol years ago. And the only reason my dog is still alive today is because she decided to bring the chocolate bars from my office into the living room, and she left the wrappers on the floor. And that's how I knew that she'd eaten not 1, not 2, but 3 dark chocolate bars sweetened with xylitol. And I can tell you that was a really large vet bill. They had to measure her liver enzymes for weeks after. The good news is we got to her in time. They were able to get her to throw most, if not all of it up. But super, super toxic to dogs. So keep your gum sweetened with xylitol away from your dog. And for whatever reason, they seem to like it very much. Xylitol, like many of the I think all the sugar alcohols can cause gut issues in some people. So I would say with this one, a little goes a long way. It's pretty good. I would use it with the gum. I wouldn't be using it by the teaspoon or by the tablespoon. And there's actually some drinks, some alternative to pop that certainly is better than aspartame. I can't remember. There's a whole line of pop. I can see it in my head right now. I just can't remember the name of it. They've got a really good root beer, different pops for people who really love pop. It's a better alternative, but I would say with xylitol, like everything else, just be modest and watch your blood sugar response. Erythritol. So this is a big one. It's often combined with other sweeteners to kind of balance them out. So it's often combined with monk fruit, not so much to balance it out as to make it cheaper. It's often combined with stevia to kind of neutralize that bitter aftertaste. But here's the interesting thing. In 2023, so that was just a couple of years ago, a big study came out that found a link between erythritol and an increased risk of blood clotting, causing heart attacks, an increase in heart attacks and strokes. Now, this was what they found is an association, not a causation. Having said that, they studied like a couple thousand people, and wasn't just in the US. They also looked at a whole, I think it was like 900 people in Europe. Definitely we need more studies on this, but for people with cardiovascular issues, you may want to be cautious with this one, because somehow when they tested it in vitro, they noticed that it increased the activity of platelets in blood, which causes clotting. So definitely there's more studies needed. I've linked to the article in the show notes if you want to. And in that article, there's links to the research. Definitely check it out. And again, if you're going to use erythritol, very small amounts. Don't overdo it. Okay. There's a couple of others I wanted to cover before I close with my final comments. These last two, I thought I was going to be telling you guys, these are sweeteners with superpowers, and they kind of are, except there's caveats. So the first one is allulose. Allulose is naturally present in small amounts in wheat, figs, and molasses. It tastes just like sugar. It's about 70% is sweet, so not quite as sweet as sugar, but it's got a tenth of the calories. And it's gotten really big. There's a big brand called RX. I think it's called RX Sugar, something like that. And you can get a tub of allulose. It's low calories. It doesn't raise blood sugar. It doesn't cause tooth decay. It's been shown to help with weight loss. It may help improve insulin sensitivity. Plus, it has anti-inflammatory properties. Another cool thing, taken before meals, like 1 or 2 teaspoons in water, may improve energy metabolism and may protect against fatty liver disease and muscle loss. And this was shown both in animal and human studies. And so what's really interesting about it is, even though it's absorbed in the blood, most of it is excreted in urine without actually ever having been used as fuel. So far, allulose is a superhero. And there's a whole line of snacks being made with allulose. It's kind of one of the sweethearts in the sweetener world right now. Now here's the downside, because of course there's no free lunch, right? Large amounts of allulose can cause GI upset. So it can really cause bloating and diarrhea in some people. It is a FODMAP food. So if you're sensitive to FODMAPs, this is not going to be for you. It is not approved in Canada or Europe yet, because those two countries have decided there's not enough research on it. There was one test tube study on mouse cells that showed that it might cause muscle cell injury. But again, this is a study done on mouse muscle cells in a test tube, and they added allulose to it. So I'm not necessarily going to take that one to the bank, but it just seems that, I mean, it's got a lot of positives, but it's got a couple of downsides, and it's still relatively new. So I would say it's a pretty good alternative, but don't overuse it. I'm going to link to the article in the show notes as well. Okay, the last one I'm going to talk about today, sorry, it's nighttime for me right now, but it may be daytime for you wherever you are, is trehalose. Now, this is the one I thought I was going to say is the be-all, end-all. It's the best of the bunch. I think allulose might actually be better than trehalose, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But trehalose does have some very interesting properties. So number one, what it is, it's a disaccharide. So it's composed of its 2 glucose molecules linked together. So that means it's kind of like a sugar, right? It's a sugar that is naturally occurring in honey in very small amounts. It has a relatively low glycemic index, not very low. It has antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And here's where people get really excited about it. It's been shown to induce autophagy And it's also been shown in mouse studies to protect mitochondria in the heart. It provides energy without spiking blood sugar. So that's all really good stuff, right? We're like, yeah. We're in business. The bad news is, number one, it's wildly expensive. Number two, it does cause GI issues in people lacking an enzyme called trehalase. Now, there's some talk that maybe Saccharomyces boulardii might mitigate that, but I wouldn't say it's reliable. So if it causes gut issues for you, you may lack that enzyme. Now, here's the big one. There is some concern that it may contribute to the growth of C. difficile in the gut. Now, this should strike terror in the hearts of anyone who's spent time in a hospital and who may have been exposed to C. diff, or who may have contracted C. diff in the hospital and overcome it, because the studies have shown that C. difficile can feed on trehalose. And so for people who are susceptible to C. difficile or who've had hospital-acquired gut infections, this is a no-go. In the article that I'm pretty sure, I grabbed the article from, actually, this was written by Joe Cohen, Self-Decode. It's a really good article. He did a really nice job breaking it all down. In the article, he talks about how ever since trehalose has been introduced into the food system, there's been an increase in C. diff infections. So I'm going to say that this one, we have to be a little bit careful. We definitely have to be careful with over-consuming it. You can't just decide trehalose is going to be my sugar of choice. And also, it's still a sugar. So net, having talked about all these different sugar and sugar substitutes, and guys, I didn't cover it all. I know I missed a bunch. There's, what's that agave I didn't talk about. I generally think personally that agave is just really processed, and I'm not a huge fan of it. What else is there? I was going to talk about date sugar. Date sugar is actually really interesting because it's dehydrated powdered dates. It doesn't behave exactly like sugar because it still has the fiber from the dates. Plus it's got minerals, it's got potassium. It's actually pretty good. I'm going to say that date sugar maybe should have made the list. It's definitely something to look at because it is a food, right? It's dehydrated date. So my final word on this whole topic is, as I said at the beginning, the truth of the matter is that sweet and that sweet taste is essentially addictive to us. And my advice, and because we live in a world where foods have been made hyper palatable to us, which means they've been made to taste better. They're saltier, they're sweeter, they're more sour. Like all the foods that we eat that are processed, and especially if you're a person who's been raised on or tends to eat a lot of processed foods, you're always looking for more sweet, more salt, more sour. And when I was working with people as a nutritionist, I would take them through a process where, number one, we exercised sugar out of the diet for 30 days, just for 30 days. And it was really tough on some people. People who eat a lot of sugar really struggle when you take it away from them. It's a really tough thing. Having said that, coming out the other side, they would find that they would have recalibrated their palate so that all of a sudden eating a carrot tasted sweet to them. Eating an apple was like a sugar bomb. And I will say that, if you're eating Honeycrisp apples, they are sugar bombs, but any apple would taste super sweet to them. They reclaim, or you can reclaim your enjoyment of natural whole foods if you go to the trouble of doing a sugar detox. And I would really recommend it, because the challenge with always looking for, well, what's the sweetener I can use? Can I use a sweetener and just replace sugar? The problem is that your brain's getting a signal that you're eating something sweet. your system's going to be looking for that energy. It's going to be looking for those calories, and it's going to drive your cravings. And like I said at the beginning, you know who you are. Some people, when they start eating sweet, they just can't stop. So you're going to end up overeating, and eventually you're just going to eat too much of something, right? So to me, the real answer is to do a sugar detox if you can. It will be miserable for a short period of time, but you will come out the other side so much happier and so much better off than you were beforehand. The second piece of advice I will give you, if you don't want to do a sugar detox, or you can't, or you don't believe me, is get a continuous glucose monitor. At this stage of the game, I think even in the US now, you don't need a prescription for it. You can get a continuous glucose monitor. I know in Canada, you can go to a drugstore, or even better, you can just go to Costco, go to the pharmacy in the back and get yourself a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. I have one on my arm right now. They will all interface with an app on your phone. And there's also companies like Levels in the US. Who else is there in the US? There's a whole bunch of different companies in the US where they'll provide coaching. They provide you with the continuous glucose monitor. And it's a really good way, frankly, to test all of these sweeteners, or not the artificial ones. Stay away from those. But you can test all these sweeteners, because even the ones that aren't supposed to increase blood sugar, in some people will, right? And some people will respond worse to some than others. So you've got to do your N of one here. You've got to do your own experiments and do the work. And if you're going to consume these sweeteners, then you've got to do your own work and check out, is this going to spike my blood sugar? And that way, by process of elimination, you will learn what is safe for you and what isn't. So first piece of advice, maybe the first step would be wear a continuous glucose monitor, test the different sweeteners, test different foods, learn about your response to different foods. Like for me, for example, if I even look at white rice, my blood sugar goes to the ceiling. It's crazy. But I mean, the white rice for other people isn't that big a deal. Hummus, like smashed chickpeas, used to drive my blood sugar to the ceiling. Ever since I did a gut reset with a guy by the name of Joel Green, who does great work, I actually tolerate them better, because in his gut reset, we rebalance the microbiome, and I reclaim the ability to kind of use that kind of soluble fiber, which is actually really good for the gut microbiome. And your gut microbiome is going to have a lot to do with your response to a lot of these different sweeteners. So, but as it turns out, with Trehalose, again, if you've ever had issues with C. difficile or spent a lot of time in hospitals, probably you want to stay away from that one, just out of an abundance of caution. So anyway, back to what I was saying is continuous glucose monitors, so that you learn your body's response to different sugars and sugar alternatives and foods and all that kind of stuff. And second, be modest. Be really modest. Use in small amounts and do that sugar detox. There are some great ones out there. There's lots of really great programs. There's actually someone, if you look her up on Instagram, Danielle Hamilton, I had her on the podcast, I think it was earlier this year or late last year. She does a lot of, I think her program used to be called Break the Sugar Shackles, which I thought was really a great name, but she's probably got some program right now on helping people to break their reliance or addiction, if we want to call it that, on sugar. And it's really worth doing. When I used to do this with people, they were always amazed at how much better they felt. You can get a reduction. Obviously, you could lose a few pounds, but most importantly, inflammation goes down, insulin sensitivity improves, energy improves, pain decreases, brain clears up, like sleep gets better. Everything in your life can get better. Skin improves, really, like all the things. So that's it. That's my final word. I did the honey one. I've done this one now. I don't think I'll do another one on sweeteners. unless you come back at me with like a million questions and I have to do another episode. But that's my talk on sweeteners and sugar in general. I hope that you enjoyed it. Remember that you can find me on Instagram at Nathalie Niddam. You can go to natniddam.com, my website. You can sign up for my newsletter and definitely check out my community because I do live Q&As in there. I have podcast guests come in and do live Q&As. We have experts who come in every month, talk about hormones, talk about thyroid, talk about peptides, talk about the gut microbiome, talk about sleep. It's really cool. It's a cool place filled with cool people. And we'd love to have you there if that's something that resonates for you. If you enjoyed this episode, you know what to do. Shoot it to a friend. You're anybody who would get value from it. And finally, if you're feeling inspired today, definitely leave us a review because that is how the podcast finds more people just like you. So thank you again so much for today. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.